Is muted.
And your mic is muted.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honorable authorities, Dean Sir, fellow faculty members, and amicable student friends. It gives me immense pleasure to extend to you all very warm greetings on behalf of United World School of Law, Karnavati University. I'm glad to invite Mr. Vivekanand, advocate and trustee of Citizen Forum for Justice, to deliver the welcome address and to introduce the organization.
Muted.
Honorable Mr. Justice Adarsh Kumar Goyal ji, former Judge, Supreme Court of India and Chairperson, National Green Tribunal, Professor Dr. Banerjee Chakka, Dean, Vellore Institute of Technology, AP School of Law, Shri Nargund MB, Senior Advocate and Additional Solicitor General of India, Karnataka, advocates, lecturers, students, friends, media, and invitees. On behalf of the Citizens Forum for Justice, Karnavati University and United World School of Law, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome each one of you for today's webinar on the International Human Rights Day. Citizens Forum for Justice was established in 2011 as a non-governmental organization dedicated to the cause of justice and human rights. Citizens Forum for Justice works to spread awareness about human rights, justice, environmental law, health, education, and law in general by way of constituting fact-finding commissions, publications, media seminars, lectures, etc. The United School of Law is one of the constituent colleges of Karnavati University, Gandhinagar, that strives to develop outstanding professionals in law. It is one of the finest law schools in the nation with innovative programs in law and management. I once again take this opportunity to welcome each one of you for today's webinar on International Human Rights Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I consider it as a great honor to introduce Shri Justice Adarsh Kumar Goyal, who is the chairperson of National Green Tribunal. He was also the former judge of Supreme Court of India. He was also former Chief Justice of the Odisha High Court and Guwahati High Court, and a former judge of Punjab and Haryana of High Court. Justice Adarsh Kumar Goyal's contribution to the cause of justice has been immense. I would like to quote one such instance. Initially, when Justice Adarsh Kumar was appointed as the chairperson of NGT, there were huge backlog of cases that were pending, not only with the principal bench, but also with other zonal benches. Since his appointment, Justice Goyal has made all benches functional by hearing matters through video conferencing from Bhopal, Chennai, Kolkata, and Pune bench. Over to you, sir.
Muted. So you're not audible.
Sir has to be unmuted.
Is unmuted.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
My friend Nargunji and Professor Banerjee Chakka, Nishtha Agarwal ji, thank you very much for the introduction. Vijay Lakshmi ji, Vivekanand ji, all the organizers, faculty of the United School of Law, Karnavati University, and Citizens Forum for Justice. First of all, I would like to compliment you for organizing this webinar on International Human Rights Day. It's a very interesting and important subject. Well, we all know that awakening in the world about human rights started after a lot of torture, lot of cruelty of human beings at the hands of different authorities, particularly after Second World War. And after First World War, international community adopted League of Nations was formed. Then after Second World War, United Nations was formed to replace the League of Nations. But then the forces, powerful forces or powerful countries with military might, with ambitions, they are willing to crush any rights with their might, because their approach is to fulfill their desires, and there is no end to desires of imperialism, desires of expansion at the cost of anyone's life, their desires are supreme. So interestingly, on 10th of December 1948, the world community adopted UN Declaration on Human Rights. That's a very interesting topic. I just want to read only one line with your permission. And that is the third preamble of this UN Declaration. It says, whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse to rebellion against tyranny, that human rights should be protected. So this is the reason given. If you do not want people to resort to rebellion, then give them human rights. So this is the thought with which there is some conflict as far as we in India are concerned. Because our thinking of human rights is not based on stopping people from rebellion and therefore accepting them. So after this UN Declaration of Human Rights, I welcome this declaration. I appreciate this declaration. I'm not saying that this declaration should not be there, but my little objection is against the recital which says you are giving human rights so that people can be stopped from rebellion. But this is not the reason, in my view, for which we should give human rights. We have to give human rights because we are humans and others are humans. They are also as good humans as we are. Atmavat sarva bhuteshu yapashyati sa panditaha. We see others as we see ourselves. So that is the thought we have for our human rights. Now there are very, very nicely drafted, with great amount of effort, various international covenants, treaties, or documents dealing with the economic, cultural, social rights, civil and political rights. And there are various treaties, various covenants which have been introduced. They are all welcome. They are all for advancement of human rights. Because human being is a great living person. Among all other species of life, I'm not saying that all other life it may be trees, it may be the environment, all other environment. That's all has to live in harmony and all has its. That's how this beautiful world, this beautiful earth, the life which we have on this earth, perhaps we do not have on other planets. The reason is this harmony or this balance is not available. We are searching. We are going to the moon. We are going to the Mars. We are going to different planets to see whether we are now short of space. We have expanded so much, we are not finding sufficient space here. So we are trying to explore, can we go and live on the moon, or can we migrate to the moon or to the other planets, or set up our systems there. We have partly succeeded. Man, it's all creation of human mind. Man is great. Man has great human mind. But beyond human mind, man has great soul. And what is the mission or what is the purpose of the human being here? There is a great philosophy in this country which has its own uniqueness. There are different philosophies. All philosophies are good. But then we have our own thought system, which is very interesting and important for this subject of human rights, which on this day, when we discuss, when we explore what are the different thoughts, all this debate is exchanging the views, exchanging the thoughts, and also referring to various thoughts already available. So there are humanitarian on theoretical aspect I may mention. It's all known to all learned people here, that there are several treaties and covenants which we'll refer. Under our constitution, under Article 51, we foster respect for international law and treaty obligations. And most of clauses of UN Declaration on Human Rights are incorporated in the Indian Constitution, in the preamble, in the fundamental rights, in the directive principles. So they are all components. Basic thought is perhaps the same. Basic thought is perhaps the same. Our respect for human beings, our equality, our liberty, fraternity, justice, and consideration for the children, for the women, for the elderly. But then I can, if you, there is, I think, in a limited time, it may not be possible to read. You can read at leisure what is the UN Declaration of Human Rights, what are the several covenants. They are freely available now on internet, and how they are translated in our Indian Constitution. But the point which I will like to make is slightly different from that. And therefore, I'm not reading, but broadly, these are the rights of equality, right of fairness, right of justice, right of liberty, right of fraternity. And then we have to guarantee integrity of India, unity and integrity of India. This is our preamble, and that's how we have given this constitution after freedom in an independent country. Now, what was the position prior to independence? I'm only referring to 9th of June 1929, when Bhagat Singh was tried for a great revolutionary fighter for the freedom, fighter for the liberty, in a town hall bomb case. Bhagat Singh threw a bomb when the assembly was in session. The bomb created noise and smoke, but did not injure anyone. And then he surrendered, he was arrested, and he was tried for 307 IPC. That is for attempt to kill. And as we lawyers know it, that earlier it used to be section 342 earlier in 1898 Criminal Procedure Code. Now it is 313. Where at the end of the trial, the accused is required to explain the circumstances at him. At the trial, that he threw the bomb and that was an attempt to kill. So Bhagat Singh made two points, which are very interesting. First point is a technical point, may not be so interesting, but that's an interesting point of law only. The first point he made is, sir, the bomb which I threw, this is the chemical composition. You can test it from the laboratory. And the laboratory report is here. The bomb could not injure anyone because I designed chemical composition of the bomb myself after studying so that nobody is injured, because I believe in human rights of everyone. I did not want to kill anyone or injure anyone. So the bomb was exploded. Its capacity was only to create a little noise. And I will give you the justification. He pleaded himself why this noise was created. And actually, there is no offense committed. But if you want to hang me, I am not offering a defense. I don't want to run away. I did not run away after throwing the bomb. I was very much there. I surrendered to the police. I have been in jail. I am willing to be hanged also. And I will not file appeal if you hang me. So this is the statement he made. This was the legal point. This second point he made is why I did it. Why I created noise in the assembly. He said, I want to change the present order to enforce the human rights. And what are the current status of human rights? The person who is growing the food is hungry. The person who is weaving the cloth is naked. The person who is building the houses is without shelter. So this state of affairs is resulting in violation of human rights. That's a very interesting speech to read or statement to read of Shahid Bhagat Singh. And this was the thought which inspired the minds of our freedom movement leaders. And they said they were not fighting for gaining any position or power for themselves, but they were fighting for advancing the rights of people who are deprived of those rights by a tyrannical foreign empire. So that shows that human rights are not creation of UN Declaration of Human Rights. I've given only one example, documented example, which is a part of trial in court proceedings. So we have in times immemorial, and Justice Rama Joyce, as we all know, has compiled all the verses from the ancient times, from the different Upanishads and Vedas. And one or two sentences which I want to use are well known to all of us, because in our daily life, perhaps we use them, is that Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kachit dukh bhag bhavet. Now, this is a sentence for everyone's happiness. And happiness is much wider term than human rights. And the thought is that unless everyone is happy, you can also not be happy. You cannot be happy at the cost of others or by making others unhappy. And why this thought is the question. This thought is not that others do not rebel, because we treat others equal, number one. Number two, we think the mission of human life is giving happiness to others. That's our duty. It is my duty that you enjoy your rights. Why? Because I can't be happy without doing this duty. If I think my duty is only to enjoy my rights, and how I will get enjoyment is there are so many material things from which we seek enjoyment. living in a good house, wearing good clothes, eating good food, having social security, having good family, having good friends. Certainly that's an enjoyment. But then much more than that is available in the Western world. Many of you may have gone to the Western world. There, all these rights are there. But then we also these days measure our achievements in the country by economic terms. And these days, since 1991, our country has adopted liberalization, privatization, globalization, as they call it, LPG policies, with a view to find, our economists think that we need wealth from other countries. We are a poor country. That also is debatable. And only solution is somehow or the other, we increase the foreign direct investment, FDI. And that will lead to everyone's happiness. Everybody agrees, we all agree that everyone's happiness is our goal. That is the goal of our constitution. That was the goal of the freedom fighters. Jawaharlal Nehru, in his first address on the night of independence, he said the object of freedom now is to wipe every tear from every eye. That's not the expression used for the first time, but that was an expression even earlier used. But that's what Nehru, in his tryst with freedom, in his parliament speech, he said that. Certainly, everybody agrees that working for everyone's welfare or promoting welfare is the goal of human life. Now, if we see where all these material desires are fulfilled, and that is the limit to which we fix, the world is fixing itself, and our leaders think economic progress, and economic progress is measured basically by the Sensex, means the share prices of the different companies. If the Sensex is high, we think we are progressing. But then there are Supreme Court judgments have also referred to those writings that FDI is not HDI. Foreign direct investment or high rate of growth of economy is not equal to Human Development Index. See, so many star hospitals have been set up. So many big highways have been constructed. But the happiness measure of the society as a whole, if we want to measure it, will be in terms of, is anybody deprived of food or cloth or shelter? Is there any hunger, poverty, illiteracy, ill health anywhere? If it is there, perhaps it may not be possible to say that we are an advanced country. And it's not only of India, it's of the world. It may be China, Russia, US, Europe, or any other Africa. Or ultimately, the test of happiness is that nobody is hungry, nobody is without basic needs. That's why, therefore, first clause of UN Declaration of Human Rights is everyone is entitled, everyone is born equal and free. When we interpret our fundamental rights, basic rights in the Constitution, when we have a right to life and liberty, we say the life means a dignified life. And liberty is not only physical freedom, but then there are conflict of my freedom, my liberty, and your liberty. If I say it is my liberty which must be enforced at all cost, even at the cost of depriving others of the liberty. That's not possible. It's not possible to do it. Your liberty and my liberty both will have to be protected. How it is possible? That is the question. Now, we have said equality, certainly, but all human beings are born equal and free, but do they remain equal? Are they equal today? We say equality of status and opportunity. Is it there? If I am born in a good family, what great thing I have done? I am getting everything. But if I am born in a poor family or a family which is deprived, am I getting equal status or equality status, equality? Or if I should, how I can get it? How everybody's aspirations can be fulfilled is a great question behind this thought. So that requires, I will not take time because I have only 2 or 3 minutes and I want to be punctual, as all of you are. Once when I was Chief Justice in Guwahati, I had invited Abdul Kalam to deliver a lecture in National Law University, of which I was the Chancellor, ex officio at that time. And he told me, you connect all the law colleges by video conferencing in the Northeast. So I connected by video conferencing to all the law colleges. And there was a question answer session. So people asked, students particularly, who are the fresh minds, after he made some opening remarks, they asked how it is to be achieved. I've already said broadly what I wanted to say, but I'm only now referring to the question and the answer placed there. And the main question, as all of you who may have heard Abdul Kalam, always he used to recite that and say that. He used to ask students to take oath. And the oath he used to ask them to repeat these words, which I am now going to speak. When there is a righteousness in the heart, there is beauty in character. When there is a beauty in character, there is harmony at home. When there is harmony at home, there is order in the nation. When there is order in the nation, there is peace in the world. So he used to ask everyone to repeat that. But the central point is, when there is a righteousness in the heart, other things follow. So righteousness in the heart is the foundation for guaranteeing human rights. We have beautifully drafted all human rights, all declarations. All intellectuals have worked hard, and they are very good declarations, but they remain on paper unless there is righteousness in the heart. The second question was, what should be the change which is expected to make it a reality? And short answer was, do not think what I can get, but think what I can give. So these are basically, in brief, my view on what human rights are and how human rights of everyone can be achieved. Thank you.
We are honored by your presence on this occasion, sir. Thank you so much for your enlightening words. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path. Today, we had an opportunity to listen to your thoughts, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future events. Thank you so much, sir, for your mesmerizing speech. Now, I would like to request Dr. Vijay Lakshmi to introduce Dr. Banerjee.
Namaskara. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ellargu Namaskara. Good morning to all who have joined the webinar on international human rights law. We are extremely happy and proud to have a great scholar and academician, Professor Dr. Banerjee Chakka, the Dean at Law at Vellore Institute of Technology, Andhra Pradesh, a graduate from Andhra University with BAL, LLB. He holds LLM degree from the School of Oriental African Studies, London, and MPhil and PhD in International Law from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He completed his postgraduate certificate course in learning, teaching, and research in higher education, has postgraduate diploma in French language, literature, culture from the National University of Ireland. He has also diploma in the industrial relations, personal management, and labor welfare. Rarely you get a person like Dr. Banerjee who with so many academic achievements. He has published research articles and 3 books in the field of international humanitarian law and international aviation and space law. This shows that he has a skill to extend from the land to the space. He has presented several research papers in national and international conferences and workshops. One may wonder, how can one person achieve so many things in such a short life? And probably he can be called as Dronacharya among the teachers, as he has taught the undergraduates, postgraduates, and postdoctorate students. And as I told, the human brain is like a supercomputer. It has got 6 to 9 billion brain cells. And even a genius uses only 6.8%. And I think Dr. Banerjee uses much more than that. So I think he's a genius among the lawyers. He was a British Sheldon scholar at a school, Oriental and African Studies. He has worked in various capacities at most prestigious institutions in Bharat and abroad. He has worked as a legal advisor to the International Committee of Red Cross and also worked as research associate at Indian Society of International Law. As a cardiologist, I know the importance of the research. And I think Dr. Banerjee is an ideal person for all those students who have joined today's webinar, what they can keep as a target or a goal in their life. With immense pride and privilege, sir, I invite Professor Dean Dr. Banerjee Chakka, our honored guest, to deliver his lecture on behalf of Citizens Forum for Justice. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful introduction. And I'm very humble and I'm very grateful for this honor and your kind words. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the Citizens Forum for Justice and United World School of Law, Karnataka University, for organizing this important and prestigious event on international human rights law. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers and Professor Uma Mahesh from the School of Law at Dean and the members and trustees of our Citizens Forum for Justice, taking a lot of efforts in bringing the young students and to exposing them to the ideals of what a good society be by inculcating the culture of rights and duties. With this, I would like to thank all of you for having me here. I take this opportunity to respect my reverence to our chief guest of today's seminar, Honorable Justice A.K. Goyal sir, a former judge of Indian Supreme Court and chairperson of the National Green Tribunal, Sri Nagun sir, the guest of honor, senior advocate and additional solicitor general of Karnataka, and Dr. Professor Uma Mahesh, the Dean of the World School of Law, distinguished faculty participants of the United World School of Law, my dear students and participants. At the outset, I want to talk today, in the midst of this important event, three important things. I think our chief guest, Chairperson A.K. Goyal sir, has already laid a very good foundation. That foundation from Indian Vedas to Plato's theory of ideal state, from the Plato's theory of ideal state to ideal citizen, a righteous person, and to the Indian Constitution. It is a wonderful canvas which Sir has laid out for us. And from this background and this canvas, I want to present three important elements. And my talk may be given the time span divided into three aspects. Number one, the current context and the changing paradigm shift of human rights and the human rights mechanism. And the second aspect would be India and international human rights law. And the third aspect, the way forward for India is the issues concerning to human rights law in international level. So these are the three important issues which I am going to discuss today. In the first context, the first point, if you look at that, the changing dimensions and the paradigm shift of international human rights law. If you look at the speech given by the Honorable Justice, clearly said that everybody's looking for happiness and the welfare. Sir also has eloquently said, you cannot look at the census raising digits, measure that human development and happiness. We have to look at that from the welfare perspective of the people. When people, we are providing welfare without compromising on the development. When people are enjoying that with the righteousness, that is where the ideal state would be. If you look at our epics, whether it is a Mahabharata or Ramayana or Kautilya's Ardhashastra, all these epics are striving to tell us that this is the foundation of the human society that one cannot forget. If you look at that in a Western thinkers, Plato as well as Aristotle has said the same thing, nothing new. And at the same time, if you look at that Magna Carta, which is the precursor for entire human rights mechanism we are talking, that also said the same thing. So what I would like to say that human rights is not a phenomena, it is a values embodied in it, which we are enshrining in our Indian context. That one has to remember very well. The second point which I would like to talk from there is that the current context. We are standing at the crossroads today. Until now, human rights have been attributed to the state and state violations. But today, states have become the responsible towards respecting the rights of the individual. But from there, slowly we are deviating, where because of the economic development, when the corporations have been involved, now these corporations are committing some excesses on the lives of the people, not adhering to the laws which we have in this country, then the problem arises. I'll take one example, which I was reading yesterday, the Guardian newspaper, which in the context towards in Bangladesh, we also have such kind of incidents in India. And there was a factory, AB Bangladesh Limited. This AB1 Bangladesh Limited is one of the huge, largest factory which produces high-class brand apparels to entire world. One of the finest brands like Van Heusen, Louis Philippe, Peter England, and all the high-end brands they produces. After the lockdown, what happened? All these companies have pulled down their business with this company in Bangladesh. And this company declared lockout and asked the people to leave. And all these people, almost some 3,000 people, were struggling to meet their basic daily needs. And last 1 month, they have been sitting in front of the press club of Bangladesh and having a peaceful protest. Suddenly, day before yesterday, early morning, the police have come and they abused women. They committed a lot of excesses and they cleared within no time all the 3,000 people, and innumerable violations have taken place. Now, the question is that how do we attribute human rights to this kind of corporations? Now, our Vedas and Constitution, our political philosophy is saying that everyone's right must be ensured and guaranteed. But can we ignore this foundation of our India, the Bharat, to flourish and cherish the long dream of people to become a righteous citizens and become a state which respect the individual rights and respect the individuals? Can we compromise in the name of development the welfare of the people? That is the first point I would like to state here. The second point in the current context is that pandemic and response from the international human rights mechanism. We know that a pandemic has created innumerable miseries in the lives of the people, and it's created havoc in the lives of the people. People have lost their jobs. Daily wage labor do not have means of livelihood for them. And now, if the state, even though they declare the bailout packages, if corporations are not adhering to the ideologies as well as the ideals of the human rights which are proclaimed by the state in the constitution and the law, how are we going to reconcile with this particular problem in the name of the development? If you look at that, the Economic Times and other economic newspapers, all these companies they are making good profits. But don't we have the responsibility in this pandemic time to treat our neighbors as equal as we are? That's what A.K. Goyal sir has said. Sarve jana sukhino bhavantu. What we preach, we need to have the empathy towards our own country person. If we are not, then what is the meaning of the human rights? This is the very essence of our celebrations of the Human Rights Day in the midst of a pandemic. And the third point in the first context, that is technology. Let us look at the technology, how it's intruding. I will take the example of China. Now, China is introducing the new concept called social index technology that creates a social credit system. What is the social credit system? They want to make citizens as a righteous people and follow the righteousness by using the technology. No doubt, we can institutionalize in a certain ideals that has to be there inbuilt in the people and the country. But if you look at that as a social credit system, what they do, by using the technology algorithms, artificial intelligence and big data, they monitor the people and they create a kind of score. If you have a score between 390 to 750, you are a good citizen. Your social credit system is in the range of 390 to 750, you are a good citizen and you can live in the country. And how do you do that? The state is insisting them to work on pro bono, that is work on a charity basis, and live as a good citizen, do not violate the laws which are there. And all these things have been observed by using the technology and the surveillance mechanism and giving the credit. If you are not a good citizen, if you are failed to become a good citizen, if you fail to get the credit rating under the social credit system, what happened? You can't even book your train tickets to travel. You are barred to travel, and you're barred to go to the supermarket and purchase the basic essential items. And your children will not get the admissions into the schools, and the person might as well lose the job, and he might as well be shifted to another place. So because of that, what happens, the technology driven this social indexing system alienates the people, discriminates the people, and creates the statelessness. This is the dangers which are involved. Should we use the technology for this kind of an adverse purposes? So what I would like to suggest, we have to be cautious about use of the technology. Today, look at us. We are using the technology in mindful manner, sitting in various parts of the countries and trying and thinking about creating the righteous society by giving the rights and duties to the individuals and citizens. We have to use like this in a mindful manner. But whereas some countries are thinking about this, and this is another point where we are living in a crossroads. The second point and context which I would like to mention, that India and human rights. As we have seen that we are not new to human rights mechanisms. It is inbuilt in our DNA. As I told you that the Puranas and Itihasas and the epics which we have, the Indian Constitution which enshrines that protection of the rights of the individuals, and India is also has contributed for the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. And India is in the forefront for the purpose of declaring the basic principles of human rights, such as self-determination across the world. And the role of protection mechanisms in India, it is one of the important aspect one has to look at it, my dear friends. But we also have national human rights mechanisms. We also have state human rights mechanisms, and all these national, state human rights mechanisms we are trying to provide protections to the people. So in this context, and I would like to say that we are far ahead of the human rights mechanisms we have in India. We have the constitutional mechanisms, we have the number of legislations, we have the judgments to guide the policy of the state for the purpose of protecting the rights of the individuals. And we are new to it. But the only question is, we need to sensitize the people, those who are in the grassroots, those who are enforcing the human rights, to apply in accordance with the law which we have in our Indian Constitution. That cannot be forgotten, my dear friends. That's very important. The India's attitude towards international human rights law is very much appreciated in the world forums. But the only problem that we have not gone to the grassroots level and make this as an implementable to the grassroots level people. Let us look at that. For example, we have seen some of the pictures in the media when pandemic was declared, lockdown was declared, some migrant workers are moving on the roads and the police have ill-treated them. But we cannot blame the state for that purpose. We need to sensitize people and the enforcement agencies towards the implementation of the human rights. That is what very much needed. We have the plethora of laws. We have the constitution, but a constable working in a small rural area might not be having awareness towards the implementation of this pious document and obligations. But when we sensitize that person, that is where the true human rights protection mechanism will come. And this is the duty of our students and our scholars and intellectuals to sensitize these people. And here we are doing that. That is why we need to have the rights education from the school level itself. That is another important thing we have to, because Supreme Court judgments, High Court judgments, and the law may not be reachable to the common man. and the abuses committed by them cannot be attributed to the state. We have to be very cautious about that. At the same time, state must not be shy away from talking about the human rights abuses. This is one of the important things which we have. Let us look at the third context, where India's way forward. Let us look at that. India, in 2018 December, it was elected to the prestigious Human Rights Council in International Human Rights Mechanism, that is in United Nations, with overwhelming support by the members of the United Nations. We have 193 members of the United Nations, out of which 188 countries have voted for India to be the part of United Nations General Council, that is United Human Rights General Council. That means world is looking towards India to lead protection of the human rights mechanism. When the world is looking at us, should we shy away from the implementation of the human rights and accepting the abuses and not talk about the abuses which are happening? For example, everyday newspapers we can see, and everyday newspapers we can come across, and they have every day says that there are abuses going on. These are the abuses which are become the rampant, and there is a culture of impunity. There is a routine violations with regard to the regulation of the atrocities against the women, children, human trafficking, and against the Dalits and marginalized communities. We cannot just shy away from talking all these things. We need to talk, and we need to provide the mechanisms. That is where the world is looking at us, by giving the thumping mandate, by electing us with 188 votes in the United Nations General Assembly to become the international leader for the purpose of leading the human rights movement. The first reason, you know why? Because India was a prime supporter of self-determination movement in 1963. And India fought against the colonial oppression. India fought against the imperialism. India fought against the colonial plunder which happened over a period of 200 years and much more than that. When India stood for it, all the developing world stood behind India and looking forward to India's leadership in the United Nations and the Human Rights Council. Now, when we have not only the domestic responsibility of protecting the rights of the people, can we shy away from the international responsibility? We have the responsibility. Now, my suggestion would be, when the human rights rapporteurs or reports have been presented in the Human Rights Council, we should not condemn them, but rather we should look at it objectively and see, and we have to have a self-introspection. When international community and the national community looking forward for the good governance and the ideal state and righteousness, we cannot compromise on the violations of the rights of the least of the people. When we do it, that is where the idea of justice will prevail, and the idea of justice on the basis of which we established, that is Citizens Forum for Justice, the ideals will be realized. As Plato said, justice is a virtue. The ideal state and the ideal ruler must strive for providing justice to the least of the people. When we do that, then the idea of justice will flourish and the state will raise up to the expectations of the people. So this is the idea of India, which I have in my mind by protecting the rights of the people. I'm sure, my dear friends and dignitaries, you all agree with me that this is the idea in which we need to inculcate among the citizens of this country. And we need to stand up, not only providing the justice, but also talking about the atrocities which committed by the people and educate the people. With these few words and my ideas, I will stop here, and if you have any questions, I'm very honored to answer all the questions. Thank you so much.
That was really an inspiring speech, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to take this golden opportunity to invite Sri Nargun, who is a renowned senior advocate and is currently the Additional Solicitor General of India for Karnataka High Court, Bangalore, appointed by the Ministry of Law and Justice, Government of India. In 2011, he was also awarded by Rajotsava Award. Now, I would like to invite sir. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning,
I
sir.
really thank the Citizens Forum and Karnavati University for giving me a platform to share along with Justice Goyalji and the Dean and the Professor, the Professor Chakkaji. They are wonderful people who have shared this platform. That itself is a privilege. For the whole of this platform, I congratulate the organizers on this occasion for getting them on one platform and the divergent views taking to the same conclusions. Justice Adarsh Kumar Goyal and Dean has taken us to this end as such. To speak about Justice Goyalji, he spoke about the Constitution, he spoke about the Sanskriti, and he brought to the human rights. And ultimately he said, everybody's happiness is the human right itself. That is one of the wonderful definition Justice Goyal has given. That I take it as a good definition for the human rights. Likewise, Professor has taken me, starts from Magna Carta, Aristotle, and he brought me to the Indian Constitution, he brought to the human rights, he brought India forward. That is the best part of it, what the India should do even today and tomorrow, saying that we should introspect ourselves and we should become the leader of the human rights. Professor, you deserve the best compliments from this platform and the whole of this community as such. We are grateful to you for your contributions, sir. You said the human rights is within our DNA. Yes, sir, we are asking for human rights not only to the human beings, but also to all Jeevis of this planet. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. So, everybody, every person, every creature of this earth should be happy. That is what the Indian Sanskara has given to us. Just I'll pose 2 or 3 questions to myself. Number 1, what is human right? I'll only put in this way, what others should not do to me, the same thing I should not do to the others. According to me, that is the simple understanding of human rights. And this human right is being adopted in India and in our Indian culture wonderfully well. Therefore, it is an occasion for us to take the platform of International Human Rights Forum now, find out small defects within India. It is happening here and there. I can straight away say what is happening in one particular state in India. Is it not a violation? Are we not required to raise our voice and say that, yes, in this particular state, human rights, the police authorities are taking action against the so-and-so, the citizens? These are the areas which we require to address. Definitely, whatever the others have expressed it, we are going to take it to the next level, that is Jagat Guru Bharat. That is how I can say. And I conclude only these words. Take the opportunity. Let us take the lead. Let everyone who are all present on this platform and with whom we can influence, will take the human rights to its natural goal, that is, everybody should be the happy and the happy personalities. That's all. With these words, I intend to conclude my thanks. And I thank you, the organizers, once again. Thank you, Madam Vijay Lakshmi ji. Thank you, Vivekananda. Thank you, Nishtha, for your cooperation.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for such a mesmerizing speech. Now, I would like to request Professor Uma Mahesh Satyanarayan, Advisor UWSL, to deliver vote of thanks.
No question and answers?
We can
Do we
have
have
it.
questions? Can we have one or two questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Post this session, when we conclude.
No, after the vote of thanks, we can't have. So just before that, probably one or two questions can be taken. Can I ask a question and make a comment to Dr. Banerjee, please?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yes,
Sure,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes,
Sure,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Banerjee, you mentioned about Kautilya's Arthashastra.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would like to tell you, my husband's ancestor, Rudrapatna Shama Shastri, he translated Kautilya's Arthashastra from Pali to Sanskrit and then to 10 languages, including German and Russian, got 10 degrees, 10 PhDs. Probably that is a benchmark for anyone who would like to do the
That's true.
post-graduation.
That's true.
And regarding my question as a doctor, just the other day, Supreme Court has given a judgment that pasting on the quarantine houses regarding the corona infection is not right. But then if that is the right of those people to avoid stigma, what about the right of the people who unknowingly get into them and then get the infection? So this is like, it is like homicidal to the others. So is it not wrong to have that sort of judgment? I'm not showing any disrespect, but as a doctor with the concern, I'm asking this.
Yes, ma'am. It's a thank you so much for a lot of information, and thank you for the wonderful question. This is what the foundation of the basic human rights is. The people have to be righteous. Like our Honorable Justice A.K. Goyal sir has mentioned, everybody should be aware of their rights and duties. The righteousness should be there among the people. That is the foundation of the ideal state. Like if I am suffered with cough and sneezing, and I should restrain myself to be at home because this is in a pandemic time, I'm not only posing the threat to my family and the whole society at large. And now I have to be righteous.
Correct.
That righteousness should be there within us. We cannot be negligent and we cannot be very arrogant to go and spread. And if you do that, what is the righteousness? That shows the values which are embodied within us. If I am not doing that, I don't have the right to speak that others should be righteous and then I have my own values.
Correct.
This is the
Correct.
foundation what we have to inculcate. That is why let us look at that the very foundation of the entire the constitution, the foundation of the human rights. Even I'm going back to the Magna Carta. The simple understanding was when the king was oppressing the people, peasants, and said that, and the peasants said that, yes, we are ready to pay the taxes, but you are nobody to plunder our resources. That is the basic beginning point. The king has to be righteous, the state has to be righteous, individuals have to be righteous. That is a wise, one of the virtues which we need to have in our society. Like today, we can see that in the streets of our own neighborhood, people are indiscriminately chewing tobacco and pan. And we speak so much about that. They indiscriminately spit on that. But today in the pandemic time, we are telling that, please be cautious. So we need to inculcate the culture of the righteousness to the people. For
Thank
that,
you.
we cannot blame the state. State is not that. Who is the state? It is we. All of us put together becomes the state.
Correct.
When for example, now we have the 79, 80 people over here. If somebody, I am abusing everyone, does it make any sense? Can we attribute that to entire group? No. That righteousness have to be there in each and every individual. That is the basic precursor of the human rights mechanism should be there. And the second point, ma'am, to little extent that one, once you are righteous, you can expect the state to be righteous.
Correct.
That is the foundation of human rights in my understanding. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
In fact, it is the rights versus responsibility. It's the responsibility of every citizen to see that everyone else is also happy and healthy. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. But before the right and the duty, I talk about that righteousness is the virtue of every individual. One has to possess that one. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sir, I would like to ask a question. May I?
Okay, Manav.
Yeah, please.
Manav,
Go ahead.
Good evening, good afternoon to everyone. I had listened to the whole communication and whole views of my different benefactors, benevolent. My question is, everywhere it is referred to as it should be done, it ought to be done, but the ground reality is very different. So what is the message, or what is the light our faculties or our speakers would show us that we could change to change the ground reality? Because on paper it is everything gold, but on ground it is not gold, it is like something else.
Okay. Can I answer or?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is also very, very good question to be answered. That is, we have that in a constitution, 395 articles, and we have the numerous number of laws, and we have courts, judges, and everybody. But where it lacks, the lacking is that sensitivity towards the issues. Everybody thinks that law is for lawyers and police. We are not concerned about that. Why? For example, if you go to a kind of some different people like some other than the lawyers, the moment even lawyers, moment you talk about human rights, they will look at you, say that oh, you guys just talk about the law, and you talk about the rights, and you look like a different species among your own fraternity itself. If intellectual property rights lawyer, if a commercial lawyer looks at you, says that, yeah, you guys are not human rights. That means there is a kind of denigration of that particular attitude towards that particular thing. It's not that. This is the foundation. Now, the lacuna is that sensitivity towards individual. And second thing is that sensitization process. Look at, recently I was doing the training program for the police people. And when I'm talking that, they say that we never heard about these things. We know the law, but we never got the opportunity. And they are saying that we are not even have a rest time to relax with our own people, our own family. And where do you expect to follow all these things? A 10th class student or plus 2 pass out student becoming a police constable or police officer, we cannot expect them to be understanding the law which we have. We need to sensitize them. That is the basic point which I always suggest. Once you sensitize them towards the law, and it is acceptable, and we can do that. That is why I insist every law school and every forums like this must bring people and sensitize the law. And that's what particularly the Forum for Justice, the Citizens Forum for Justice is doing a wonderful job conducting this dissemination. Vijayalakshmi ma'am herself, she is a doctor. Let us look at that and how she is very much interested in the field of dissemination of the rights of the people. That's a very wonderful thing we have to do it. That has to percolate down to the last of the ladder. Laws are not for the judges, law students and the government. It is for the people. Once we realize that one, but sensitization and dissemination is one of the key aspects I would end here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Due to paucity of time, I would like to request our advisor, Sir UWSL, Professor Umamesh Satyanarayan, to deliver vote of thanks.
Thank you. Honorable Justice Shri Adarsh Kumar Goyalji, Chairperson, National Green Tribunal, Professor Dr. Banerjee Chekka, Dean VIT AP School of Law, Shri M.B. Nargun, Additional Solicitor General of India for Karnataka, respected colleagues of United World School of Law, trustees, Citizen Forum for Justice, our valuable students, ladies and gentlemen. I deem it a great privilege to extend a vote of thanks on this occasion. The very presence of Shri Justice Adarsh Kumar Goyal on this platform, in spite of his busy schedule, is a reflection of his commitment to the cause of justice. We are highly inspired by your gracious presence and would like to thank you for sharing your vision, sir. We are extremely thankful to Professor Dr. Banerjee for his gracious presence. I would also take this opportunity to express our thanks to Shri Nargun for addressing this august audience. We are very thankful to Shri Ritesh Hada, President, Karnavati University, trustees, Citizen Forum for Justice, and all the members of United World School of Law for their support and valuable guidance. Lastly, I would also thank my student friends in cooperating to make this event a success. Before we conclude, I leave this quote from Rig Veda, Samagnana Sukta. All have equal rights to article of food and water. The yoke of the chariot of life is placed equally on the shoulders of all. All should live together in harmony, supporting one another, like the spokes of the wheel of the chariot, connecting its rim and hub. I once again thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this webinar. Thank you.